Who's ready for Tuesday? Welcome to the Tuesday Live. I am on today with Joel Ryals from FortressK9 and John Willis from Special Operations Equipment. I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast. And this show, I thought we'd start out, Joel, by catching up with you a little bit. But before we do that, John, what's your shirt?
Stop believing in government. This was one of the older ones. I just was outside working and threw on whatever was sitting in the back bathroom there.
I'm an overnight success today.
Yep. It says takes years of hard work is the rest of what her shirt there says.
Eight years of podcasting this month.
That's awesome.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've been training dogs 20 years and I was able to go comfortably full-time 4 years ago.
Awesome.
So only took 15 years of training. These guys are like, I want to be a dog trainer in 6 weeks. And I'm like, well, then go find somebody else because I don't know what to tell you.
You see a lot of social media content start up with dogs, but you don't ever see them stay
I know.
Dogs.
Well, my favorite is I don't have a big channel. Like my Instagram channel has like 4,700 followers on it. And that's probably where I'm that, and TikTok is about 7,500, something like that, 6,500. And what I love is, so I'm not as big as a lot of these other guys, but I'll be like, this is getting a little stagnant. We should do something new. Hey, let's do some night vision training with the dogs. And so we'll post up a couple of videos with night vision film. And then all the other dog trainers are doing night vision film. And I'm like, oh, that was interesting. All right, well, why don't we throw up some thermal training? Let's see what happens with that. All of a sudden next month, everybody's doing thermal training with their dogs. I'm like, this is pretty interesting. I like it when you're leading the way and everybody else is following, but they don't even know who, like nobody else knows why they're following.
Well, you guys are about to have Don Edwards out there, I think, for a class. So you're about to get some incredible content.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think Bob's hosting Green Line Tactical. I think they're coming out there. At least I think I heard that.
Is that the night vision and the vehicle stuff?
That's the guy with the helicopter with the little bird.
Oh, yeah. He sent me a question about, do you want to participate in this? And I'm like, I don't know. I have to look into it a little bit more. I might just want to train dogs around it while you guys are doing it.
Yeah. So they have, he's partnered up with a company that owns, I think they have 3 A-Star choppers and they have 2.
Did John freeze?
Yeah. A little bit.
So he's doing the balloon sign. Oh no, that's confetti.
Yeah, he's partnered up with a guy that's got 3 A-Stars and 2 Hughes 500s. Those are the current birds that the Army's using.
Awesome.
So when you see those,
that's a little bird, right?
Yeah, little bird, Kiowa, they come up and they have 2 shooters on each side that can unass off that plank. And those birds are set up just like that. They do aerial target engagement daytime and nighttime.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to get a couple dogs familiar with helicopters. And I don't know if they're planning on any fast roping or rappelling, but I haven't rappelled dogs in a while. I was talking to Bob. I'm like, we need a tower. You can use it for shooting on the range, and I can use it for rappelling dogs.
Well,
so when is the GSD for building the tower up there?
Oh, I know, right? Like that's up to Bob, though. I don't make those decisions. I just put the bug in the ear and hope it happens.
You have to have a helicopter fuselage at the top, and you might as well Airbnb that.
Exactly. Well, if you can't do a fuselage, you at least got to do you got to measure the distance for the skids, and then at least put a pipe out there so that you can step off onto the pipe and then mimic the exit ramp because it's a whole different start to exiting a helicopter than it is, a corner of a building and the first time I did actual rocks, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, there's no corner. It just kind of gets a little more steep and a little more steep as you go. And it's all weird if you haven't done it before. And if you're trying to do it with a dog hanging off you, it's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah. Rock is always ledges and stuff. Buildings is easy. It's bridges and anything where you gotta, because you're going to swing once you hit there.
Yep. And it was funny. A buddy of mine had a dog that we used to train with a lot. And he was a Navy SEAL veteran. And he would do all this stuff. Like he'd go on these, Navy SEAL, like a swim run charity, collection thing. And he'd take his dog with him. And so his dog would jump in the water and they'd swim out to the ladder that you're going to climb up onto the overpass, the shipboarding ladder. And then they got to run. And so he hooks his dog onto his back. and it's in a harness and he's climbing up the ladder and everybody's like, that was awesome. Your dog did great. And he's like, my dog didn't do great. My dog just hung on my back while I climbed a ladder with an extra 45 pounds strapped to me.
Yeah.
And, but it looks cool. People like it. You know, all the dog has to do on rappelling is relax, hang in your harness and chill while I get us to the ground. And then I'll let you loose to do something fun.
Yeah. Not freak out. Don't start twisting.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Which for some dogs, I'm sure is easier said than done.
Oh, when you first introduce a dog to hanging, you only lift them like 30 feet off the ground and they hang like 15 seconds and they start going like, well, okay, let me down. And you're just like, no, relax. So you start low and you lift them a little higher and a little higher and a little higher and a little bit longer, just hanging in the harness. I mean, it's like us. If you sit in a harness, it's not comfortable. You know, when we were getting ready for airborne school, it was always, if you're comfortable standing there, you're not going to be comfortable when you're hanging under a canopy. So it was one or the other. Like you could have all the pain while you're floating down, trying to figure out what to do when you hit the ground, or you can have the discomfort when you're sitting in the plane. And it's the same for the dogs. When it's tight to be comfortable, it's not tight when they're on the ground and vice versa.
So how's Ohio?
Joel. Yeah, that's where I wanted to go next. Absolutely. How's Ohio and what's new with you? Like, I'm pretty sure you pulled off the impossible in 4 weeks.
Well, we got everything here, including all the dogs and all our stuff. Took 4 trips with a trailer. So I bought a big 40-foot trailer and used that twice. On the first trip up, I blew 5 of the 6 tires. And so we got basically small semi tires put on it after that. And the second trip up, because of the blowout, I ground one of the U-bolts, one of the actual nuts that goes on the U-bolt that holds the leaf springs in place. And so one of those popped and the leaf springs, jutted out and rubbed the back of one of the tires. I only lost 1 tire that time and it wasn't a blowout, thankfully. But it was a day and a half of figuring out how to put a leaf spring on, which I'd never done before. So now I have that experience. And then we got that trailer in. And then on the way down with the flatbed trailer, I stopped at a rest area to use the bathroom, walked back out, and I'm like, I know there was a tire on that trailer the last time I looked at it. Like, where the hell is the tire? So I walked up, and our guess is the bearings froze up on it, and it just went flying somewhere. It was nighttime. I didn't hear any squealing or crashes or big booms while we were driving. So hopefully it just flew off into the median and nobody got hurt. But so I had to get a new bearing and wheel and tire to replace that. That was low drama though, because that trailer is set up to hold heavy pieces of machinery. So when one tire goes, if it's empty, you just keep driving. Like it doesn't matter. The other one, it's like strap it up because it'll just drag if you lose 1 tire on the other stuff. But we got everything up here.
You got a triaxle with dualies on each, so you got 6 wheels each side.
On the 40-footer, I do. No, it's not dually. So it is 3-axle, but it's just single wheels on each one.
Yeah, you can limp with 2. You could limp with even 1. Man, we got a flat when we moved out here on one of the trailers, and our little bottle jack wouldn't lift the trailer.
I couldn't get my bottle jack under the trailer.
Yeah.
So it's actually not hard to, even on the big trailer when it's full, it's real easy to change the tires if you have a 3-ton floor jack.
Yeah.
The problem is I don't have a 3-ton floor jack. So I had to, the first time, the dude that replaced all 6 of my tires, because I was like, well, if I'm getting 5, I might as well get 6. So, and make them all the same. So I got all 6 tires and I was like, listen, here's my problem. I can drive all these out to, because my trailer is just sitting on the interstate, right? I had to drive over to him and get everything. So I'm like, do you mind if I borrow a floor jack? And he just loaned it to me. He's like, just bring it back. I'm like, all right, thanks. And once I had that, I was able to lift it up, swap them out real fast. And the hardest part of the whole thing was getting everything off without that. So it's like, getting it just high enough to get that stuff off. But when the tire's shredded, it's not too different. You don't have to get it up as high, but then you can't put the new one on until you lift it to normal height.
Yeah. But
that was an adventure. We always say, adventures are nasty, wet, uncomfortable things that make you late for dinner. And but they're the ones that make good stories down the road, right? It's like nobody wants to hear a story about I had to drive from Florida to Ohio and nothing bad happened.
Yeah.
Hey, I learned your lesson too.
What's that? Which one?
I drove my camper 700 miles to an event and 700 miles back. So I learned your lesson. I changed all tires out before I left.
Oh, yes.
I was like, I
Yeah.
think as I understand it, Joel was on the side of the road for 40 years with animals and chickens and all this other
years.
stuff.
It's an adventure. Well, and yeah, when we had
It was
those,
probably 3 days, but
when we had the one tire go out, the thing that was the issue during that one was we had 8 dogs in the back of the truck in crates, like stacked. So there's 4 crates and then plywood with ratchet straps holding it all together with 4 more crates on top of that. We had 2 cats in a large crate in the trailer. And then we had 6 chickens, 7 chickens, something like that, in like, 2 per crate stacked around. So we had all these animals in the trailer and we're just sitting on the side of the road in the heat. So we had to keep it open, and then people are driving by and it's like, meow, cats are like, what's all this stuff going on? And so that was more of the issue, taking care of the animals during that process than actually repairing the trailer. But we got it all here. Everything's moved. Now we joke around and go, hey, do we have this? Yes. In a trailer somewhere.
Yep. Attached to another truck.
Property. I just don't know how to get to it yet.
Yeah.
But and then they're going to be starting the second round on the house either Friday or Monday. So hopefully in a month or two, we'll actually be unloading everything and moving it into a house. And but RV life isn't as bad as it could be, for sure. It's definitely a lot better than being homeless.
well, your RV's comfortable anyway.
It's a pretty nice little RV.
Yeah. Are all 4 of you in there right now?
We are. So it's got bunk beds in the back, and so each kid has a bunk bed, and then we have the main bed up front, and then the little living space in the middle. And I don't spend most of my time inside anyway. So
I was gonna say, you're at the time of year where everybody can just get out.
Yeah.
You've got that whole RV living thing sorted out. I mean, you spend a lot of time on the road anyways at shows and stuff. So you guys know how to do all that.
Well, that's all my wife. I just sit outside the RV and smoke and train dogs.
So
my
wife
you've got it all the RV living.
Yeah, you've got it down, man. You guys cook in there and you've got all the generators and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we're plugged in here. The only downside to being plugged in here, another aspect of the adventures, right, is you don't think about it till it's happening, is we're plugged in, but the breaker that we're plugged into is a 10 amp breaker. So if the AC kicks on in the middle of the day, the breaker's like, nope, too much, pop. And we have to come in and reset it and go, okay, open everything up. Hopefully we get some breezes coming through to cool everything off. But and about the time that gets upgraded, we'll probably have the house done anyway, so it won't matter. But it's all fun, and everybody says they want to do something meaningful, or they want something big in their lives, or whatever it is, and they always have some kind of goal that they're identifying, and half of them are saying I'm going to do it, and the other half are just lamenting that they don't have it. And it's like all of that stuff is on the other side of all this stuff we're talking about. Mm-hmm. It's like you don't get that without having some kind of adventure on your way there. And
as soon as you have it, you start over and you do it even greater the next time, which amplifies a whole different set of problems.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a never ending cycle. Like I can't remember what the philosopher was, but I've heard people quote him a lot lately. And basically the thing he says is, if we had paradise where all we had to do is sit around in bubbling pools of water and have, ample amounts of food and busy ourselves with the procreation of the species, we would break it and destroy it and tear it all down just so we'd have something interesting to do. Like, we're not built to just sit around and do nothing. That's nice for an afternoon, but that's not life.
Yeah. If everybody had it, there wouldn't be any greatness if it was all equal.
Exactly. We want something hard. We want a challenge. And my encouragement to people is find a challenge that you can reasonably do and do that. And then when you're done, find another one a little harder and keep going.
Well, and if you choose your challenge to move in a direction you want to go, that's helpful. Because if you don't find a challenge that does that, you will end up being given a challenge that you may or may not want.
Exactly. You're either
going to get you where you don't want to be.
Yeah. Well, I think Jordan said it this way. He said, what are the chances that you're going to hit an aim wandering around randomly? And it's like, there's a lot of random, but there are very few paths that will lead you in a direction you want to go. So if you want to go somewhere, you've got to identify where it is you want to go, and then you got to start working toward it. And I think what stops a lot of people is when they really start to look at that, they realize how far away from it they are, and then they give up before they even start. And because they think it's linear, they think I've got to do work from here to there to get to that level. And it's like, it's actually more parabolic. It's going to be no progress or almost seemingly no progress. But each time you make some progress, it like doubles the next time. And then it doubles again. And then it doubles again, which is why it's the 5 or 8 year overnight success, right? You work for those 5 years that nobody sees all your hard work. And then by the time people realize you're there, it's because you're on the parabolic curve. You're shooting up at that point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I went back and listened to my first episode, and I was already talking about the My Three Things book. I just didn't know it yet. It wasn't called that yet. I was already roasting coffee a half a pound at a time and starting to ship it to people.
Yep.
Like imagine a 2 pound order was 4 roasts.
I had to do 4. How long does a roast take, by the way?
20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was selling it for $12 a pound. And I thought, I listened to everything in that first episode. And I'm like, I'm literally doing the same stuff I was kind of talking about then. I'm just doing more of it. Yeah. I was pretty much roasting up until I sent John the link to this live today because we had a lot of orders over Memorial Day. So
always a good problem to have.
Okay, so tell us how this all went down. Like you were in Florida, you had an awesome kennel with a pretty cool prepper pantry, as I recall, and chickens out in your yard, and you were hoping to buy that place, and that just didn't happen. So then you had to make a choice. And did you move within 4 weeks? Is that timeline correct?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay.
Yep. So thankfully let's call it 6 weeks with a generalized heads up prior to that something was probably going to happen. So we were, my kind of in my head, long-term hope was that when the couple that owned the property was getting ready to retire and move, we'd just be able to buy the property. And so I was kind of, waiting around, and then we got the heads up. I think it was at the spring SRF, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the last fall SRF, that, hey, we're starting to get offers on the property. You guys, since you're there, you're with your networking people, you guys might want to start asking around about, where you guys are going to go if we sell it. So at least that had started the conversation circles and finding out what kind of things were available. And then whatever was, so I guess it would have been the middle of February. In the middle of February, we got told, okay, we got an offer, 6 weeks till we're off the property. And it was like, wow, that was way less time than I thought we were going to have. And so it went into like full-time speed mode. It took us, when we talked 4 weeks of the move, from the time we actually started packing things and moving them, that was about 4 weeks. Because it took us 2 weeks to actually lock in exactly what we were going to do. And so once we had the, okay, I sent a message to Bob, and he said, yeah, I want you out here, fly out, take a look at the property, make sure this is where you want to come. So I was like, all right. So I got on a flight, I flew out here, we walked the property. I said, yep, this will work for me. He said, I want you here. So we kind of locked that in. That took about a week to get that locked in. And then it was, full bore, putting things in boxes. And the very last 2 trips, because it took 2 trips to actually get the dogs here, were loading dogs in crates and going, I hope you guys are good for the next 13 hours. We got to hit the road. And then driving them until they got here.
Oh, you just had an internet moment, but giving him a second. He may have to do a big reboot. So what I noticed looking from the outside, John, was like he decided to move, and then it all came through where they had to build in Ohio the places for the dogs before they could move the dogs. I'm wondering if this is my internet. We shall see. Guys in the comments, tell me if you can hear me talking. Nope, Joel went away. John is frozen. Enlightened and prepping EMP. Can you hear me now? Okay. So it looks like, so they were both on Starlink, I think. And it looks like Starlink has crapped the bed for 2 people simultaneously. So now we go into live Q&A with Nicole Sauce while we wait for these 2 to come on back. So shoot me questions about what you want to hear about. What I don't know and can't tell you about is specifics of Joel Ryals' move. I can only tell you that it was fun to watch him set an impossible goal where you're moving your entire business, you're moving your entire residence, selling a house, and getting going to move here in just like 4 to 6 weeks. It just happened that quickly. And when I brought him on, I kind of wanted to talk about how he made the impossible happen. And then Starlink crapped the bed. So you both disappeared at the same time.
Well,
Welcome
at least
back.
you didn't. So
yeah,
I'm glad we're back. Yeah,
I was like, you guys got to ask me questions because now I don't know what we're talking about.
First time ever getting booted off a live stream. Yeah. So how did we actually? Well, I think the most important thing and the thing that made it possible for us to do this was the fact that we had a community. And if we hadn't had a community, I don't know what we would have done. I mean, we would have figured something out that, that's just what we do. We're not just going to quit and give up. But in terms of having a very fast and also very successful transition where it was the business essentially was only down for a month and then we're up and running again. That's because we had a community of people, and one of those members of the community, I'm not 100% sure he'd want me to mention his name, so I'll keep it, but he's on the chat. So if he tells me he does, then that's fine. And so we made it happen. We, loaded everything up, and, that part of it wasn't really the challenging part. I mean, I've moved 17 times in the Army and like 8 times since then, something crazy like that. So moving is not like, people who've never moved think it's hard, and it's a lot of work, but it's like, you just throw shit in boxes, put it in a trailer and go. Like the hardest part is making sure the trailer gets there, like driving it slow because it's overloaded and everything else. If you have commercial stuff like a U-Haul or something like that, they're designed for that kind of weight. That it's work, but it's not like you can't do it in a limited period of time. It's having the place to go. Right. And so even the agreement we had here is we have a apartment we're building out, and the build out of the apartment, because obviously we don't own the apartment, is the X amount of years of rent for the staying on the property. And so I'm like, sounds like a good deal to me. Like I'll make that trade. But we needed to sell the house. Like I had the upfront payment. I could do that right out off the bat. But it's like, but I got to sell the house to finish it. I can't just, out of nowhere come up with this. So we got up here, everything's going good. And it's like, chirp, 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 chirp on the house sale front. And, people are calling and asking, and then they're like, just ghosting, and it's like, come on, guys, this is a really well-priced thing for being in the middle of Orlando. Like, why aren't we getting this thing sold? And we're not like money in account yet, but supposedly today is closing day on the house. So if that goes through, then we're set for all the rest of it. If it doesn't, and I sell a high value dog, which I've got several clients we're in contact with, then we'll cover that house with that, and we'll recoup it when we sell the house down the road. But one way or another, we'll figure out the financing. It's Bob told me one time, he said, an entrepreneur is somebody who jumps off a cliff and builds the plane on the way down. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how this move felt. It was like, jump off the cliff and make it work as you're going down, and hope you got it put together before you hit the bottom. But it works. And it's happened multiple times, and, in one varying degree or another. And it always works. It's like, I don't know why people get so panicky. I mean, it's not like there's not stress involved in it. There's definitely stress involved. But it's like, if you do the work and you make the sacrifices necessary, something's going to work out. It always works out. It may not be exactly what you wanted it to be, but something will work out.
What do the words fuck around and find out mean to you, Joel?
Well, I guess it depends on the context. So if we're walking in public with our dogs and somebody screws around, well, they're going to the hospital or in the ground. But if the context is, I'm living my life, I'm trying to do this thing, and as far as I can tell, something bad happened, which usually isn't something bad. It's just something that's pushing you to the next level if you look at it the right way. But something bad happened, and I like to fuck around and find out. Like, not in a stupid way, not go mess with somebody else and get beat up. I like to go, hey, let's try this and see what happens. And then usually it works. And sometimes you're like, oh, that didn't work out very well at all. And then you get to find out, right? There was this old story. I guess when I read it, it wasn't an old story, but it was about way back when, during the Ice Age, when the oceans were, lowering, and then they were starting on their way back up, and the primitive people that were living there, and they were all freaking out because the oceans were starting to rise again. And it was just kind of this, medieval adventure story. But one of my favorite characters in this story was this little girl. And I think in the story, she's like 10 years old. And there's all these massive soldier guys and all these different characters. And this little girl, they would have this catastrophe, right? It's like, tomorrow you're all being put to death, because you did something the king didn't like. And so they're all in jail. And the little girl would always, no matter what the situation was, this was her response. This is so exciting. Like, I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, how are we going to get out of it? And it's like, that's the way to live life. Just because something seems bad in the moment doesn't mean that it is. It all depends on how you look at it and how you deal with it and how you move forward.
Yeah, I've been thinking about fuck around and find out a lot, because there's a big old Gen X revival going on over at TikTok. And, they say it. And what people hear is, if you mess with my people will mess with you.
That's an aspect of it.
It's an aspect of it. But the other thing is, if you go out in your yard and you think, gosh, I wonder if I change the shape of the land here, if it would, change how the water goes down the hill and make things better. And so you do it, and then the water comes and it makes things way worse. You're like, okay, I fucked around and found out. But now I learned something, and I can make a different adjustment to that. And to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be willing to fuck around.
Absolutely. Well, what's interesting? I was like, no, when I first heard this. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, okay, maybe. So apparently one of the ways that distinguishes liberals and conservatives in general, left-leaning and right-leaning people, is left-leaning people tend to be more open to new ideas, and right-leaning people tend to be much more, conscientious, right? They're like duty, focused on duty and what we're supposed to do and things like that. And then the person that was saying that said, entrepreneurs are really open. And I was like, what? I don't know any entrepreneurs that are left-leaning. Like, that's really weird. I guess Silicon Valley, but it didn't seem like those guys started that way. It seems like they fell into it down the road. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But most of the entrepreneurs I know that are like, business owners and stuff like that, they're not left-leaning, although they are very open to new ideas, though. And to be successful in a business, you have to be open to new ideas, because you think you want to build, widget X, and it's the greatest widget ever created, and everybody's going to love it and buy it. And you make it and you put it out there and nobody likes it. But maybe you get 10 or 20 people that go, if you just made this little tweak to widget X, I would buy it then. And if you go, no, widget X is perfect just the way it is, well, good luck being a business person, because you're not selling anything. But if you listen and you adjust, or even if they go, yeah, I don't like that widget, but I see that you can make that widget. So what about making this thing over here for me that's not even a widget? And you go, well, I have the ability. I've invested in these machines. Maybe I should do that. And then you do it and you start selling, and you may end up doing something that you never even thought was the thing you were going to do, but you're really successful at it because you were open to the idea of shifting. And that, we had to do that over and over again in this whole move. It's like, we're going this direction. And it was like, no, you're not. And it's like, well, I can sit on the side of the road and cry about it, or I can get up and do something and make it happen. And, it's a different plan than I thought it was going to be, but make it work. And it seems that the people that are most successful in life are the people that are open. But because the fuck around and find out part of that is, those are the people on the edges, right? The people that are the open people are the people that have trouble drawing boundaries. They don't want boundaries. They're like, no, we should test all this stuff. We should be open to lots of things. And so they're always out on the fringe, pushing the edges. And most of the stuff you find on the edges is crap. It's briars and thickets and stuff you don't want to mess with. But every so often on the edge, you find that really cool thing that's the thing that makes the big difference. And so when you I was just like, this is how we grew up as kids, at least how I did. I was always out in the woods, running around, playing, finding animals, starting little fires in the woods when nobody was around, and, cutting myself with my pocket knife, trying to whittle wood. But I was always messing around with stuff and finding out how it worked. And then, nowadays people are like, how do you know how to do that? I'm like, well, when I was a kid, I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. So I figured it out. And now kids today aren't given the chance to fuck around and find out.
The power that we have at our fingertips with the internet to be able to learn anything instantly is pretty darn cool if you also apply a fuck around and find out attitude to it.
Absolutely.
If instead of doing that, you basically just learn all about it in theory but don't do anything in practice, then you just get stuck in that place and you don't move things forward. So it's interesting that you talk about starting your move and then things didn't go how you planned, so you started doing something until you knew what to do next.
Yep. Well, it's like the tires were all slashed on the side of the road, and it's like, well, the first thing I got to do is go somewhere and get tires, so I need to unhitch this trailer. And it was a freaking heavy trailer, and it's hard to unhitch, especially when all the tires are flat on it, because the angles were all different than they were when I loaded it up. But you just get out and start doing it. I think it was raining that day too. So get out in the rain and start unhitching that trailer, because you don't have a choice. There was a guy I was listening to the other day. I think he's got the podcast Modern Wisdom. I can't remember the dude's name, but he's got some really cool guests on there. And he was reading a quote. I don't even know who the quote was by, but it was a really cool quote. And I'll butcher it a bit, but it said, here are a bunch of things that aren't doing the thing. Reading about doing the thing is not doing the thing. Tweeting about how you're going to do this awesome thing tomorrow is not doing the thing. Scheduling time to do the thing is not doing the thing. YouTubing how to do the thing is not doing. And he went through this like fairly long list of all these things that people want to do before they do the thing. None of that is doing the thing. The only thing that's doing the thing is doing the thing. And it's like, you just got to get off your ass and go out there and start doing it. And if you don't exactly know what you're supposed to do, which if you're doing something new, what do you know? You probably don't know what you're supposed to do. The only way to find out is to fuck around and find out. Yep. Positive spin on fuck around and find out. That was pretty cool.
It is why people in our generation are, I think, more equipped to learn new things as the world rapidly changes.
Yep.
Because we're not afraid to reboot the computer. So then you're like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen with this internet tool I'm playing with? I'm going to break it. Okay. What's that going to do? Right. But I don't know. John, what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I mean, we always had to reboot the computer. We grew up in the very beginning. There was no option but to reboot the computer. It wasn't even called rebooting. You had to turn that fucking thing off or it would, heat up and catch on fire back then. Back to Joel's point about, liberals being open-minded and such. Of course they're open-minded. They have a guaranteed job. They don't actually have to produce a product. And then when you become very, very wealthy, almost elite, then those conservatives, they're pretty much purchased and they flip-flop back to liberal. But the majority of liberals, you have two kinds of people, somebody that produces something or has a product that people seek out. And then you have the other side and they have a job and their job is paid for and secured because that money is stolen from the other people. So of course they're free-minded to vote with other people's money. So, I mean, you had a destination. You knew what the target was. The course changed many times. Were we going to fly there? Were we going? But there was no question that you were getting there. You knew what was there. You'd already gone and seen it. We experienced similar. I said, hey, I need to get out of California. Yeager said, come to Tennessee. That was on a Thursday. We came out Friday, Saturday, Sunday, rented a place. 30 days later, we were here. We didn't have a shop location. We didn't have anything. We just came here. And started working and then started amassing and taking over the building and pushed James out. And, it worked out.
We're taking over.
Yeah.
I don't think I realized you started sewing in his building.
Oh, we started sewing in a closet in his building.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that building was subdivided into little apartments back 20, 30 years prior. It was like a little meth lab. Like when we got in, We literally cut a hole in the wall, took a bunch of trash and old furniture out of that middle apartment. And when we took down the false ceilings in the second one, there was like used hypodermic needles that fell down out of there. The cops used to, because crackhead stuff, the cops used to raid those places all the time. So the landlord was just like, I'm done with it. And we just kept taking those, and we still have that building. That's where the snake trailer is. That's where the old sew shop was. We took over everything on that property. We still hold that property.
That's awesome.
Yep. And it's just about making it happen.
Yep.
It's not even making it happen. I mean, just do some shit. So many people that blah 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 about making shit happen. They're not even doing anything.
Right.
We've convinced, we've told people nowadays with this word balance, and it's really destroyed people's lives. People look at these 3 8 hours that they have. They go to work for 8 hours. They don't fucking work 8 hours. You're at a place for 8 hours. When you really evaluate that, you are not working 8 hours. And then they have this 8 hours that they have to sleep, and then they've got this other 8 hours. And everybody talks about how they want to do things, but I don't have time. Do not let me follow your ass around all day. I can find lots of time. And the same could be said for me. Just because I am here 16 hours, I'm sure if you watched me without me knowing, you could identify a couple hours in there that I'm probably not working.
Yep. Well, that's one thing.
John just sparked an idea where we make a Pocket John app for your phone where he follows you around, but it's a program and not actually John.
Well, if you
pointing out every time you're wasting time.
We need to follow John for like 6 weeks and program an AI to be John.
Yeah.
And then you can sell it and put it on your phone, and he'll yell at you whenever you're sitting still for too long.
Shock you is the real answer.
That's a better idea. That's more on brand.
Yeah, if you want to get onto this program and pay the fee to do this, you have to wear a collar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had this great idea of a basically combining a taser and a dog collar for children that they wear, and it's for safety reasons. So if they start running toward the road, you just hit your panic button.
Yes.
And they tase up and fall to the ground so that they don't get run over by a car. But if you wanted to use it for discipline purposes every so often, you could do that too.
Yeah.
Especially if they're fighting in the car on a long road trip.
What was that Schwarzenegger movie, Running Man? I think that's what that was.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. Me and my wife have been going through like, what old movies do we want to watch? We just watched The Sixth Sense with my kids.
Oh shit.
Oh, that's a good movie.
I was like, you guys have never. Well, I asked them first, like, have you guys ever seen this movie? They were like, no. I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell you anything about it. We're just going to watch it. And they were all like, I was like, the only thing I'll tell you is at the end of the movie, you're going to want to watch it all over again because everything you thought you knew in the movie, you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, okay. And sure enough, at the end of the movie, they're like, whoa, I want to watch it again. But we didn't get a chance to watch it a second time while we were there. But it's old movies, man. There's so many good old movies out there that have such great messages, and we've lost so much of that to the crap that's being produced now.
Blazing Saddles.
That's right.
I've popped up The Day After. Remember that TV series?
Yep. 5th grade.
So the nuclear explosion.
Horrible.
Oh yeah.
Like it's the effects are horrible, but it is as terrifying as a 50-year-old as it was when I was like a preen.
So I heard the other day that Blazing Saddles, the last time a movie was on the number one, a comedy was like a number one movie, was Blazing Saddles.
That's awesome. I heard that ABC now, whenever they show the old movies, is giving trigger warnings out for them. Oh yeah.
Well, Disney spent $60 million, I think, going back to all their animation and adding chemtrails in. That's no bullshit. Like they're rewriting, redoing all their animation and stuff to have chemtrails in the skies.
That's crazy.
Yeah, ABC. I didn't know they're even still around. They're about to not be.
Yeah, it's almost like all of that stuff's fading. The only people who watch it are our parents.
Yeah.
And when they're gone, like I don't watch. I watch some streaming stuff when I'm sitting around, but that's it. And
that's happening with music too. Like songs that you and I probably could scream the lyrics to, kids haven't even heard today.
Yeah.
Well, they're starting to. Just just like when we were kids, we were listening to new music, and your parents are like, "That was out 40 years ago," and it's going back in circles. That stuff's
We
all
call it
being
oldies,
remade.
and you're like, wait a
Yeah.
minute,
Yeah.
that was new when I was in high
You're
school.
like, no, that was newies. I bought that vinyl
Mhm.
record straight off the shelf. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's the best.
But yeah, those old movies are something that we started watching at night here is Jack's bioreactor compost course. The Spirko's
Mhm.
like his first course. Because I figure if I'm going to spend a whole hour watching something, it should be useful to me.
Try and make it
And
useful.
there's compost here, but I know I can up my compost game. So he did a really good job with that course. I hadn't really started diving into it until last week. And that is well worth the investment if you are making your own compost.
Yep. Well, and I know I waste certain amounts of time in my day, but I think especially if people are trying to start off and build some kind of life that they want, they need to understand that there's stages to that. And when you're first starting, you do not have the luxury to sit around and relax and watch a Netflix show in the evening. When we first started, well, I guess I should say when I first started this business, I slept 4 hours a day. I was working a full-time job. I was a major in the Army. I was on the National Guard side, so I wasn't deploying at that point, but you were never off, right? You get off of work and you get home and they give you a call and you need to get on the computer and you need to do something else, or you need to stay late or whatever. So I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm out. I'm going to go get a security job so that I show up, I do the job, and I go home and nobody's going to call me. So all of my not at work time is mine. And so that's what I did. I moved from Wyoming to Kentucky. I got a job as a security guard and I slept 4 hours and I worked the mid shift too. So my 4 hours of sleep was 8 a.m. to noon. That was my 4 hours of sleep. And I'd get up at noon and I'd train dogs until I had to get dressed to go back to work the next day. And I did that for 4 years. I know, John, you have a similar story of sleeping in an office on the floor. It's like, if we want to now, we can sit back and relax sometimes. But we wouldn't have ever gotten it started if we sat back and relaxed when the building time was going on. And you have to put that time in. That doesn't mean everybody has to sleep 4 hours a night, but you better be working your ass off if you want to actually get something going. Once it's going, 5 years when you become an overnight success, then you can start asking yourself, well, do I want to give myself a little relaxed time now, or do I want to push it to the next level? And at any time, and I know, Nicole, you've talked a lot about this, about kind of taking steps up. Right. And it's like you get comfortable for a little while and then it's like, all right, now it's time to take the next step. Well, now it goes back into that work mode and you've got to push until you get to that next step. And then you can kind of go, okay, do I want to stay here or do I want to go to the next step? And there's nothing wrong with staying, or allowing yourself to have some comfort in your life, but don't use that as your excuse for not being able to accomplish the things that you want to do.
It's interesting to dive into something new and build, and you're just working every waking moment that you can possibly work to build a thing. And you do it for about 6 months and suddenly you realize you're not working all the time anymore. And somehow you figured out efficiencies, or you figured out a better way to do it, which doesn't use as much time and it becomes easier. Wherein somebody who's starting out on that same sort of task has no idea how you can keep doing that. It's because you figure out efficiencies.
Yep.
I think John probably can sew faster than anybody in your shop, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, watching John go around and feed all the animals and water all the plants and everything, like he's built a system and a routine that he doesn't even have to stop and think about it. It's just go, go, go. Now it's done. Move on to the next thing.
Well, but I'm not, my patterns are completely erratic, right? I just have what I already know how to do. And I know that I can do it in 17 minutes. That's what it takes to handle the animals. I could totally streamline it, but I'm in such a habit of doing it how I do a lot of back and forth and crossing over,
right,
that when I have tried to actually streamline it, it would take 6 weeks for me to become accustomed to it. And I'm just like, forget it. It's easier just to do it how I do it. Same with anything, but like rest and relaxing, like I don't know how to do that. You'll notice if I'm, especially like at SRF, I'll be in a group of 5-10 people talking, but you'll notice that I just like all of a sudden turn around and walk away. because I don't know how to stand there. You notice I've never come out and sat in a chair and hung out while you guys are out there at the trail. I just don't know how to do it. I'm super uncomfortable doing that. I will go do, and I'll have conversations, but I constantly have to be moving. If I sit down, you get me in a vehicle, like if I ever travel anywhere with you, I'm falling asleep. Unless I have a laptop in my lap and I'm doing social media and stuff. But as soon as I sit down, like it's done. I'm falling asleep.
Well, it's like a lot of people want certain things, and I don't think they realize what they're saying when they want that. There was an Elon Musk quote where he said, people think they want to be me because he's got a lot of money. And they're like, you wouldn't want to deal with what I have to deal with in my brain every day. Like it never stops. It never shuts off. It's always going. There's always ideas. And I would like it to stop, but it won't. And the most successful people I knew in terms of fastest promoted enlisted guys in the military were guys that were exactly like you. They couldn't sit still. And like we had several first sergeants who were like 32 and they were a first sergeant. Like there's only one more rank after that. After you hit that rank, then you're done. And they'd be like 32, but they were dudes who couldn't sit still. They were always going and doing things. They were always checking on their soldiers. They were always, there was something to do and they were going and doing it. And there's a benefit to that. But then at the same time you go, but if you want to be that person, you've got to take the bad with the good. And all of the temperaments and personalities have both. They have good and they have bad. And I think it would be more useful for people to stop worrying about what other people are doing, like take ideas and things like that. But you're you, and take your strengths and then find something to do and go do it. And you don't have to be somebody else. You just have to be successful at what you want to do.
Not only do you not have to be somebody else, you don't want to be somebody else.
No.
It's miserable to be somebody else.
Well, have you ever wanted something really bad and then you got it and you realized it was either crap or it was worse than what you had before?
Yeah. Or you hate it. I hates it.
Yep. And it's like, well, that was a big freaking waste of time. And I've known guys who have worked really hard to get a new job and they found out they hated the job worse than their old job. And then they just settle into it. Like they still hate it. And they just decided, well, I guess this is just what I'm doing now. And like, I always tell people I'm an ultra high risk taker. Like that's my wife's thing she's got to deal with, is because her husband will just make a decision and go. It's like, yeah, that cliff looks like we could survive it. Let's jump. And I was in the Army and I got out of the Army and I went back to being a sheriff's deputy. And then I was there overall I was there for 6 years, but I was back out of the military for right at a year. And I was just like, fuck this. I'm not doing it anymore. And I literally, like, without even talking to her, like we'd kind of mentioned some things back and forth, but without even like getting a confirmation, I just went, I quit. Here's my 2 weeks. I'm out in 2 weeks. And where are we going? We're going back to Alaska. We were in Hillsborough County, Florida. We're going back to Alaska. That's where I want to go. I go do real estate for a year in Alaska, realize that it's not working. And I start selling dogs in that process. And then went AGR in Wyoming Army National Guard because it would make me some money while I got the business going. But I was a major, so they wanted me to work too long. And then I went over and did the security stuff so I could actually get the business off the ground. It was just like one after the other, but it was like, I know what I want to do. I was just trying to figure out how the hell to get it to happen. I couldn't figure out how to get it to happen, but I was just jumping from one thing to the next. It wasn't like, oh, well, I guess I'm here now and I'm making pretty good money back in the Wyoming National Guard. I guess I should just chill. I mean, this is pretty good. My family's well taken care of. I was like, that's not what I want to do. So burn it to the ground and move to the next thing, because I know where I want to go. I just got to figure out how to get there. So just because you think you want something and you get it, if you realize it's not what you want, well, now you know what you don't want. Thomas Edison, I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And then I learned how to make a light bulb. And, you might have to find 1,000 things you don't like before you find the thing you like.
If you don't walk away from what you hate, you never find what you love.
Yep.
So when you build something that it turns out to be what you hate, it's okay to walk away.
Yep.
It's not giving up. It's realizing something and moving on. And that can be part of your process.
Like goats.
It might not be, but it might be.
That's right.
Goats.
Like goats. John doesn't like goats.
But you got
I have this goat as a pet goat.
I like them at your house.
They're fun when you visit, right? Scratch them on the head and then go do something else.
Yep.
That was fun. Now move on.
Yeah. He likes them at my house. They're actually being phased out here too. Not for exactly the same reason, because I don't have a Porsche for them to hang out on.
You just have to have fences, man. You just got to have fences.
Okay, how can I teach my bully not to forever sleep cats? She's great otherwise. And I think they meant attack cats or chase cats or something like that. So I assume bully is bulldog, chasing cats.
So
how do you stop this
if
drive?
they're dealing with, well, first you want to teach your dog, leave it. And whenever you have a negative behavior your dog is doing, positive reinforcement is not the solution. And too many people don't want to give their dog a negative consequence. And that's like raising children without ever giving them a negative consequence. They're going to be little hellions. So if your dog starts to do a behavior you don't want, you have to do two things. You have to correct them for the negative behavior, and then you have to give them a behavior you do want them to do. So if they're going after cats, all my dogs know leave it. So if I see a cat and I know I have a dog that has a tendency to want to go mess with them, I say, leave it alone. And then they go to lunge after the cat. They've got their prong collar on, which when they lunge and I snap at the same time, it's a pretty good correction. But I told them beforehand, leave that alone. They lunge, I correct, and then I use my verbal correction, phooey that. I said, leave it alone. Come over here, Foos, and seats. Right? So Foos is to be at my side and sit down. So sit at my side. Don't chase that cat. So I told him what I didn't want him to do. No chasing cats. Here's what I want you to do. Sit at my side. And and there's a million variations on that. If they're in the trash, tell them where they're supposed to be. They get in your trash. Don't just go, no, stop doing that. Because in a dog's brain, they're like a 3-year-old. So you go, stop doing that. And they go, okay. And they go over there. And you're like, no, stop doing that too. And they're like, okay. And they come over here. And then you're like, no, stop doing that too. And you end up just chasing them around yelling, no. And have you ever seen those parents that are chasing their kids around the house? Like, no, don't do that. It's like, yeah, you failed as a parent. If you're chasing your kid around, no, don't do that. Teach them to do what you say. And if I say no, you immediately leave it alone. But then go do this. Go over there and play. See that little pile of toys there? That's all yours. Go play with that. So you give them a consequence if they do it, and you tell them what you want them to do. And then when they do what you want them to do, praise them. So for us, our praise is verbal. We don't use toys and treats. So we just go, good seats, and maybe give them a little pat on the head. And they're like, okay, my person's happy with me now. And they'll be able to relax if they know they're doing what you want. But the problem most people do is they don't give their dog any direction. And then they wonder why their dog's doing dog stuff. It's like, you know what dogs do? They chase cats. You know what dogs do? They eat chickens. You know what dogs do? They get in trash cans and look for food. It's like, that's just what dogs do. So if you don't want a dog to do dog things, you have to teach them something new and then give them that thing to do instead.
Same thing go for barking?
Yeah. So barking, there's two aspects to it. If they're barking when you're there, you can correct them and usually get them to stop barking when you're there. But usually if dogs are barking, like let's say they're in the house, right? You might be there sometimes, but then you're not there a lot of other times. So if you want to end barking, one of the best things to do is use a bark collar, because it automates it for you, right? So you put the bark collar on, you have to fit it properly to the dog and stuff like that. And the ones I like to use, I think they're called Pet Safe. They have a little red collar and a little black box, and there's 3 posts on it. So the 2 posts on the outside are your little probes that shock, and the middle post detects vibration. So the way you actually tell if your battery's good is you rub it on a hard surface, and then you hold it up to your ear and you hear a little beep. Well, the first time the dog barks, that's what they get. Beep, no shock. And then the second time they bark, they get a low level shock. And the third time they get a little higher, and it goes up 6 levels, and then it stays there until they stop. And then after, I think it's 10 or 15 seconds, it resets back to 0. And so as long as they're wearing it properly, every time they bark, it's an instant feedback. And so they learn real quick, hey, stop that. Now, the thing I tell people with a bark collar is the very first time you put it on your dog, stay with them until they bark that first time. Because what some dogs will do is, most of the dogs, they go, roof, roof, oh, I didn't like that. And they stop. right? And then they realize, okay, it's not happening again. And then they'll repeat that 5 or 6 times till they realize every time I bark, I get shocked by this thing, and then they'll stop barking. But some dogs, the very first time, they go, roar, 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 and they keep making noise, and it keeps shocking them because they're not stopping. So it's if they start to like scream like that, you just got to grab them and be like, easy, relax. And they're like, oh, okay. Now that I stopped making noise, it went away. Got it. And I've never had to show a dog more than once that. Like once they realize, as soon as I got quiet, it stopped. Okay, that's the key. If I get shocked, just be quiet, and it will go away. And then after they wear the shock, here's where most people make mistakes. They do this with bark collars and e-collars. Is they put it on, and then as soon as they have the quote unquote result they want, they take it right off. And the dogs know you're putting a collar on them. So then they're like, oh, so when you put that thing on me, don't bark. The minute you take it off, I can bark again. Or with an e-collar and your obedience, they're like, put that e-collar on me? Yes, Commander. What do you want me to do? I'll do anything you say. And the minute you take it off, they're like, screw you, I'm free. And they run around and do whatever they want. And people go, why is my dog disobedient when they don't have it on? It's because you condition them to be that way. So if you're using a bark collar or an e-collar, once they stop barking or once that you stop needing the e-collar, then keep it on for like a month and then take it off. And with an e-collar, let them wear it for a week before you start using it. You could do that with a bark collar too, and take the battery out and put it on them for a week and then put the battery in. But I've not had the issues as bad with the bark collar with them going, oh, it's off, I can bark. Because I leave it on them for about a month after they stop barking, and then I go, okay, now we'll take it off. Now they'll if you do leave it off, at some point they're going to bark and realize I didn't get shocked. Maybe I can bark some more, and they may start up again. But usually you get at least a couple of months of reprieve in between sessions of needing it.
Yeah, he's got blue healers. He's got a ton of sheep, and he's got healers. I got another one for you. That new Pyrenees we have here.
Mm-hmm.
I keep saying smartest dog in the world, best dog I've ever had. People petting her and baby talking her during the last SRF. She has realized she can jump the fence. I cannot keep the dog in. I put a collar on her. I zap her when she gets next to it. She comes running away. As soon as I'm out, she jumps that fence. I put her in a kennel, and she climbs up the corner of a 6-foot kennel. So I have to put her in a kennel now that has a roof on it. I can't keep her in. I'm seriously thinking I'm thinking she's got to go.
Do you have a hot wire on the top of your fence?
I do not.
So here, we've got their litter mates here, and they don't touch the fence at all because there's a hot wire low, but I think the one that's the key is the one that's up high. Because if they go to jump over, they're going to hit that one and shock themselves. I don't know how much of a pain it would be to run a hotline along the top of the fence that they're in, but that would probably be your best bet to fix that problem.
Yeah, it's 3 acres. I've got 3 dogs that don't jump, and I have one that does.
You know what else it'll fix? People reaching over the fence to pet the dogs.
Yeah.
I'd be like, hey, guys, just so you know, that wire is hot, and I'm not turning it off.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I would just wait and let them figure it out on their own, though, and film it too, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, you tell them don't mess with the dogs, and they continue to mess with the dogs.
And at the end of SRF, we'll play the video of everybody getting shocked trying to pet the dog.
Yeah, that'd actually be good compilation.
Yeah, here's our bloopers, everybody. Oh, that was a good one. He had his arms all the way over the fence when he got hit right in the armpits. That looked like it hurt.
Yeah, this person said they broke their last escape artist dog with electric wire.
Yeah.
They do make, and it's another pain in the butt, but they do make Geo, you can map to a collar and she'll get shocked. But
yeah.
The problem with the Pyrenees and those collars is their fur is so thick.
Their fur is really thick.
Yeah, the only way I've found for e-collars or any kind of those shock version collars to work on them is to trim.
Yeah.
Trim their neck. You take trimmers and trim the fur under their neck, and then you can get to it.
Here's a question I've never heard before about dogs. How would I start training a dog to assist in wild foraging?
So what you're going to be doing for that is nose work. So scent detection. You need to pick. Okay, so I don't do foraging very much, but what I do is explosive detection with dogs. So I get whatever explosives I want the dog to be able to find. I combine them together, not like making a bomb, just combine the scents together into a single scent article. And then I start playing a game with that scent article. So usually what we do is we take a tennis ball, I take a knife and puncture a hole in the tennis ball, and I squeeze it, and I have my scent. I use weapon cleaning swabs. So they're like real clean cotton squares, and I have them in with the scent that I want. And then I pull out one from each scent, and I stuff them all in that tennis ball. And then I get the dog to start playing with that tennis ball. So fetch, not like sit and chew on it and it's a chew toy. It's go find it, right? And so I want them to, I throw it and they run out and they get it. And I tell them, good, find it, bring it. And I have them bring it back. And then I praise them. And I'll do that until they're really interested in getting that ball. And then I'll throw the ball, make sure you know where you throw it, because tennis balls are easy to lose in high grass. They're like the same color. I've lost a couple of them. But throw it into slightly high grass and be like, go get it. And they have to start looking for it a little bit, right? And if they're so fast, they're catching it right off the bat, just hold their collar and throw it in the grass and then let them go. And then they have to start looking for it, right? So now they're finding their toy with their nose, and they're searching. And once they find it, then great. Then you can just start putting it in some other places and then just start telling them, find it. So what you're find it or whatever, you can use another command. We use find it. That is the command you're using to start using their nose to find that thing. So you want to start introducing it right off the bat. Find it, good, find it. Now with a bomb, you don't want them to bring it, so we break that pretty quick. But with foraging stuff, you might want them to bring it or you might not, right? Because they might break it if it's like a mushroom or something, and or you just don't want dog slobber on it. So you can run them on a lead or you can run them off a lead, depending on what it is you're looking for and how the dog behaves. You praise them, lots and lots and lots of praise. Like I kind of stand my dogs up and I'm rubbing their bellies and I'm going, oh yeah, good find, good find. I'm scratching their ears. And I do that for about 20 seconds, which is a long time if you're like counting seconds while you're petting a dog. And then I go, okay, it's over. And then we kind of reset and we go do another search. And so that's like your intro. And then you kind of start breaking those scents out individually and different things like that. And you start adding different challenges. But if you're foraging, once the dog's really interested in it, then you just pay attention to them, getting really interested. Like, oh, look, I'm finding the thing that you'd like me to find. And you praise them for it when you find it. You go down and see what they're finding. Oh, good job. You found whatever it is. And so you just reinforce it with your praise and they'll start looking for more and more stuff.
That seems like a useful thing for morels.
It probably would be. Well, I know they use,
pigs,
not morels,
truffles, pigs.
Truffles. Yeah, they have truffles sniffing various different creatures. Somebody said they use, what's that really weird tapers? Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of them? They look like a cross between an anteater and a donkey. Weirdly, we had one down the road when I was a kid.
I know the picture.
And but they use them in Europe to hunt truffles. Like apparently they're one of the best truffle hunters there are.
They're training. Too. Have you seen them training those big old rats to find landmines and stuff?
No,
I've seen a lot of shorts on TikTok and Instagram of they look like they're in some African country, but they plant the thing, it finds it, and they give them something. I assume it's like yeah. Yeah.
For rats, that'd be like
like Pavlov's dog kind of thing.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome though. I mean, so the thing about animals, we talk about the eyesight between the dog and the people being pretty much equal, right? Like they don't see any better at night than we do for the most part. The big difference for us is a huge portion of our brain is dedicated to interpreting vision. For animals, almost all animals, at least all like mammals, it's that portion of their brain is committed to interpreting scent. So they not only have more scent receptors than we do, but a higher percentage of their brain is dedicated to interpreting scent. Like their world is scent. And so when you all you have to do is reward them for finding the scent you want, and they're going to start looking for more of that scent. And like Punisher, my dog, he's behind me on the floor back here. I taught him to do explosive scent before I started teaching him to track people. And I think that's the reason I could just let him off lead and he'll track, but he'll wait for me if he gets too far ahead. And, but as soon as I let him off lead, he looks at me, gets a little excited look on his face and starts looking for scent. He's like, where is it? I want to find him because I want that reward. And as soon as he hits scent, he just starts going. And so once you kind of lock it into their brain, and if I walk up to a vehicle and I snap the link on the lead, he starts sniffing the vehicle immediately. He's like, explosive scent? I can find that. And so they really get excited about it once you kind of get it locked into their brain that that's what you want them to do. Any other questions?
Oh, well, somebody wants to know where you've ended up with, or where you've ended up in Ohio, and why Ohio as opposed to, Florida to Ohio is a big change.
It is a big change. And weirdly, I'm like 45 minutes from where I was born. So I feel like I've made this big loop all through the country and ended up right back where I started. So why Ohio was because this is where we had an offer to come. And it was it was a good offer. We're well centrally located. It wasn't like it was a really bad option to begin with. And the other options, we looked into financing. And so we would have had a lot more options had we been able to get financing. And I realized I didn't have bad credit in my business. I just didn't have any credit in my business because after the divorce, I was like, I don't want any debt. It's like I struggle with credit card debt. I would have credit cards and I would just, it's magic money, right? I can get stuff. Oh, I'm spinning. Did I drop out?
Nope,
No,
you're good.
Oh, okay, good. And so I would end up maxing my credit cards out, right? So I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to, go off money in the bank. And I, was successfully able to do that for many years. But then when I needed the credit, it wasn't there. So now we're like, all right, start building our credit up as a business so that we can finance should the need arise. But my intent would be, even if we moved from this specific location, it would only be within a few miles. Like there's no real reason for us to leave the area. My first reaction to Ohio was, I'm not moving to Ohio. And then the guy said, why not? And I said, well, because they're liberal. And he was like, no, that was Ohio 20 years ago. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, we just passed constitutional carry and all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh, you're like Florida 20 years ago. Like you were like, leaning Democrat and blah, blah, kind of a purple state, but a little on the left. And then I don't know exactly what happened, but it started shifting toward the right and it just kind of kept going. And it's looking pretty good right now. So that's the situation. Plus, we're out in the country. So I don't have any, crazy laws that I've got to deal with. One of the first things I did was look up, are there any noise ordinances and are there any anti-dog tethering laws? And there are neither in the state of Ohio or in the county that we're in. So I was like, sweet. Okay, we're in business. And then it was why, and what was the other one?
So what was it?
Where in Ohio and why?
Where in Ohio?
Oh, where? So we are just to the southeast of Columbus, Ohio. So it's a little town. We're outside the town, but the nearest little town is Somerset, Ohio. So it's a teeny little, I don't even know if they have a traffic light. Yeah, they probably have a couple traffic lights and a little circle in the middle, little roundabout. And we're about 25 minutes from Walmart area, stuff like that. So it's like rolling hills and farmland all around us. And then within 25 minutes, we can be at Walmart.
Yeah, if you can shoot machine guns out there, you're probably okay.
Yep. And the last time they had a class, they lit a car on fire just for fun.
Yeah.
And caught their berm on fire and then had to put that.
It's always a trip. Like here at the TAC response range, somebody just bought some property that shares a border line, shares the property line.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and they've cut it and zoned it in. So you're going to see these stack and pack mini houses come in, and those people are going to lose their shit, but that range has been there. But it's only a matter of time, man. That's how they do it. They put houses, get people to complain, and then before you know it, ordinances start coming in.
Yeah. The benefit I have here, I think, most of the places where they haven't put any kind of tethering restrictions in are because there's a lot of hunting dogs. And people that keep hunting dogs either keep them in they're technically kennels, but they're more like rabbit cages. Like slightly big rabbit cages.
They are rabbit cages. Yeah.
And or they tether them. And so Alaska had the Huskies, the racing dogs. So, nobody would touch the rules on how they manage the racing dogs.
Yeah.
A lot in this part of the country, dog hunting is a big deal. So I'm like, me and dog hunters are friends. We don't do the same things, but we'll keep each other's backs so that they don't mess with us, have not being able to tire our dogs out.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We've got all these new move-ins, right? From the coast want to be free. And then they get in the middle of everybody's stuff. Like luckily we have enough property. You can't see our stuff from the road, but under the dog guidelines, you have to have a kennel, you have to have a doghouse. The doghouse has to have some kind of flooring in it in the kennel. It can't be on ground. There has to be another surface, like all kinds of shit. My dogs don't go in any of that shit unless we specifically lock them in because of gates. Like if you drive past, and that's the other, like people losing their shit over horses being out in the snow and cows being out in the snow.
What are you going to do with them?
Man, I've walked out and I'm like, oh man, my dog has died. It's literally asleep in the snow, and you pet her and she looks up like, hey, what's going on? And her fur is frozen.
Well, if you don't spend a lot of time outside, people don't realize. So when we were in Fairbanks, Alaska, it'd be minus 65 degrees and we'd go tracking with our dogs. And minus 65, by the way, if you've never been in it, you have no idea or concept how cold that is. Like your eyes freeze shut when you blink. So every time you blink, you have to like break the frozen seal between your eyelashes. And so it's really, really cold. But we're in like waist deep snow. And the nice thing about Fairbanks is the snow's super powdery. It's not heavy like it is in the Northeast. And so it's minus 65 in the air, but it's plus 32 in the snow. So snow is super insulative. So if it's, below freezing, the dog's fur keeps the wetness from getting to their skin. And then the snow is an insulated layer over them. So they're in 32 degrees, but their body temperature is also like 101 is their standard resting body temperature. So you got a 101 degree heater in there that's in a nice little igloo. And so it's almost better not to break the snow unless they're going to get up and move around because they're warm under there. So leave them alone. And when we went into the dog houses in Alaska, like I couldn't go in there with it's like an igloo. You have to slide down into it because they create a little tunnel with the snow and everything. I slid down in there with my jacket one time and I had to get out of there within like a minute because I was burning up in there. As soon as they go into their house, they create so much heat in that small little space. Don't feel sorry for animals outside as long as they have some version of shelter, and a snow cover on top of them is a version of shelter.
I mean, the best you can do is give them access to shelter, but they make the choice.
Absolutely. Shelter, water, and food. You provide shelter, water, and food, and then they can decide to use it or not, but I gave you what you needed to survive. And because I have dog houses for every one of my dogs. When it rains, if it's nighttime, they'll be in their house sleeping or under their house sleeping. But if it's during the day, they're running around in the rain, like splashing in the puddles and everything else. It's just they're not like we are. They don't seek comfort the way that we do.
Well, and the animals acclimate to what's outside. So you can hurt your animal bringing it inside.
Yep.
If it's acclimated to the outside. And you need to think about that because you don't want to shock their system.
Yep.
Yeah, this dude said, Edgy says the city animal control came by my house because I didn't have a dog house. She's an indoor dog. He said they actually came back the next day with a free dog house that she's never been in. Those people have too much time. They need to go deal with crime.
Yep. Yep.
And you don't have enough property. If they know that your dog doesn't have a dog house, you need better fences.
Okay. Are you going to miss Central Florida or is it getting a bit weird? Florida, I assume.
Florida is pretty good. Orlando is probably, I have not been down to Miami. So in the Central Florida area, Tampa, Orlando, over to Daytona, Orlando is probably the worst of those. And they tried to do the BLM stuff when that was a thing. And it lasted about 15 minutes and they shut it down. So in like probably the second worst city, as far as, worst cities in Florida go, that crap was shut down in no time. There's no rioting at any of the college campuses. There's none of that kind of craziness. So from that perspective, it's pretty nice. I've lived a lot of places and I've lived in the cold of Alaska and the heat of Florida. And I kind of like the middle zone. Like even in Florida, I was outside 90% of the day. I didn't like to walk inside because I would get cold. I was so used to being outside in the heat. If I walked into AC, especially if I was sweaty, within 5 minutes, I'm shivering. It was too cold. So it wasn't like I wasn't able to deal with the heat. But if you're trying to work in that heat, you can only work hard for a certain period of time. And then it's like, if you keep going, you're going to pass out. And so being in some place that's a little bit more moderate. The other thing I realized almost after I got up here was I'm so much closer to all of my clients. Like the only clients I'm not closer to are the ones who were in Florida. And you might think, oh, you got a business in Florida, that's where all your clients are. I sell protection dogs. So my clients are all over the country, and a lot of them are on the east, in the eastern part of the United States. So even if they were in Georgia, they're probably still closer to me here than they were when I was in Florida. It's a long peninsula to drive down.
Does that mean more people have already been by to see you, or no?
Not yet. We haven't had a lot of people actually visiting. But we're 45 minutes from an airport, from the Columbus International Airport. So we're not far. We have the ability for people to stay on property. And I'm not a high traffic business either, though. Like I don't have clients coming all the time to see things. It's people come when they're getting their training and they pick up their dogs, or if they're doing retraining. And that's for the most part it. So, and I like it that way. I'm an introvert. So I like interacting with people, and then I'm like, now go away. I need to rest for a day because you exhausted me.
Yeah, that's me after SRF. I'm like, you can email me next week, but you'll be more successful if you wait another week and then email me. That's okay.
So well, I've always been somebody who loved the mountains or the hills way more than the flatland. And so we have beautiful rolling hills here. Nothing that you would call a mountain, but beautiful rolling hills here. And at least for me, I love it.
What's your tornado situation like there?
They've gotten tornado warnings and supposedly had touchdowns over the last, say, 6 months. It gets windy, really breezy here more than it did in Florida. But I've not had we've not had any damage from it. We roll our awning up on our RV. We learned that lesson at SRF, the tornado.
The tornado edition SRF. Yeah.
Yeah. We did do a little repair on the awning on the RV, and we lost that one 10x10. The frame just got mangled.
But 10x10.
Yeah. At night, take your tarps off and roll your awning up. But, so when it gets breezy, we roll the awning up. But other than that, it's, the breeze here is actually what makes the temperature nicer than in Florida, because it's not as hot, obviously, but even when it is warm, usually there's a breeze blowing, and that kind of makes it nice.
That sounds cool.
There's good and bad to anywhere you live in the world, though.
And you can get used to anything. People always say, I can't move to X because it's too cold, or I can't move to Y because of the humidity. And if you move there and you put your mind to it, within about 2 years, you'll be acclimated.
Yeah, I tell people you got to give it at least a year. The first year, when you hit all those news, that first year, it activates all the genes in your body, the adaptive genes that get you used to things. Within a year of being in Alaska, when I said we were tracking outside at minus 65 degrees, I was wearing an Under Armour long sleeve t-shirt, one form-fitting wool sweater, and a windproof fleece. And I was all the way unzipped on all of them with a single pair of just medium weight gloves, Under Armour leggings, and a Gore-Tex pair of pants on, and good solid boots. That's what I tracked in at minus 65 degrees. And it's and I was not cold. If anything, I was hot. And now if I stopped moving, I was cold. But as long as I was tracking, I had to be unzipped, and you could just get used to it. It takes you about a year. It activates all your adaptive genes, and then you're good to go.
And then when you go home, you're too warm or too cold, depending which way it went.
Yep.
Which can be a surprise. But that, if you go in with that mindset, then you have more openings for places you can go and build your life, which then opens up the right market, the right kind of people, whatever it is you're looking for.
Yep.
More land, maybe you can afford more land in a different climate.
Yep. Well, I heard something the other day that said the number one predictor of depression is high expectations. It's if your expectations are high, you're probably depressed. If you're willing to just roll with things and it's this is what I would like to happen, but hey, I'll be happy with whatever happens, then you're way more happy and way more content with things, because you didn't, because what will happen is we'll have this expectation and we'll get 90% of the way there, and then we'll be upset about it.
Yeah, then
I didn't get it. And it's
I was only 90% successful.
Well, you're 10 times better than you were before you started. So how are you not happy about this? Yeah, it's all about, mindset.
Well, and choosing to be happy.
Yep.
If you can figure out how to make yourself happy where you are now, you'll learn the characteristics you want in place. And then when you build whatever you build next, you're going to be happy doing that. If you're miserable where you are now and all you see is the misery and all you build for yourself is the misery, even if you are wildly successful, you often end up miserable because you have not addressed the core underlying misery in your life.
Yep.
And it's usually all up here.
Yep. Yeah. Money's not going to make you more happy. You know, quote unquote success is here's a good definition of success. No matter how much money you have, no matter where you live, no matter what it is you have quote unquote accomplished, if you're not happy, you're probably not successful. Successful is I did the things I needed to do to make myself happy. And if you're happy, awesome.
Yep. Now your business started out as a dog training / selling your defense animals, and then the puppies that didn't become defense animals. But in the last couple of years, you've launched your Canine Academy.
Yes.
Why did you decide to do that? And what did it take for you to like fully commit? And what have you learned along the way?
So initially, the reason I wanted to do Canine Academy was because I never had a client call and have this complaint. But when you're selling Malinois puppies on the internet, everybody's like, oh, they're going to go to the shelter and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, you know what? That's a valid concern. So I should probably do something about that. And I should probably do a video series teaching people that get our puppies how to train their dogs. And so that was the initial idea. And as I thought about it, I was like, well, why should it only be people who get our dogs? Like we can make it for people that get our dogs, but lots of people need help training their dog. So then it became, okay, we're going to do a basic obedience training course for people. And we kind of had the idea of 12 modules. And the first 4 modules are like your basic obedience. And then the middle 4 are intermediate. And then the last 4 kind of get you to off-lead obedience if you want to go that far. And so that kind of became that. And I was plugging away at it and making a little bit of progress for a while. And then I got an opportunity to do a security job in Northern California. And I was like, well, can I bring 12 dogs with me? Because I have dogs I have to train and I can't leave them here and go for 4 months and do that job. And they were like, you're training protection dogs? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, and you're bringing 12 of them? And I'm like, I would like to. And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll totally hire you for that. Because I'm sure they felt like we're getting way more security than we're paying for. And so they gave me this little space on this property. There was like the way the driveways worked, it created like a circle. And I was in an RV by myself with my 12 dogs in this circle. And I had all these little spots, they were tied out and everything. And all I had to do was be on property. It was a weed growing place. And they had an employee get fired and burnt one of their other spots. So I was like, I'm not living in the house with the other employees. That's who I'm supposed to be protecting you guys from. And then we had one situation where we think the Mexican cartel was coming up to mess with it. And there was a van on a road that there shouldn't have been any other cars on with like 8 guys in it. And somebody pulled in and was like, there's a van down there. And I was like, hey, guess what, guys? This would be a great day to do a little test run on all our AR-15s. Go get them. So everybody went and grabbed their AR-15s, and we had like 6 of them. And I'm like, empty a magazine into the wood line. And so we blah, 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 blah for, a minute. And we waited about 20 minutes and had somebody drive back down the road, and there was not a van there anymore. I was like, well, it could have been nothing. It could have been something, but at least we made sure it wasn't anything. So all I had to do was be there. So I was like, well, I'm going to take my 2 cameras. I'm going to take my laptop, and I'm going to film a module or at least a lesson. I'm going to go in, edit it real quick, get it rendering, and step back out and do the next one. And so for 4 months, I was just pumping it out. And that's where I actually finished the first 12 modules. So if you look at like the last 2/3 of the initial part, there's redwood trees and all that kind of stuff, because I was in Northern California doing that. And then we got back, and retention was a problem, right? Because people get it, they get their dog trained up, and then they leave. And I was like, well, what if for the people who are interested in staying, what if we kept offering more advanced stuff? So that's when we started adding the advanced modules, and they're still very much in the development stage, most of them, but that's kind of where we're going right now. My next big project for Canine Academy is the perfect homestead dog. Mm-hmm. So we're about to start working with some puppy livestock guardian dogs, and we're going to show you things like how do you get your dog to ride on your ATVs with you? How do you get him to run beside your ATV without getting run over? How do you teach them your perimeter area? Just basic homestead dog stuff, not like anything super fancy, but things that a lot of people want to know if they've got a dog on a homestead. And so we're going to go through that and have that as a standalone module. And then we'll be pushing that out once it gets going.
I think the potential for that is even much greater than, protection dogs.
There's so much argument about how to train a homestead dog too, those livestock dogs.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm hoping is once it's launched, I want to know all the things that I didn't teach people that they want to know. Right. And then we can just kind of keep building that out and have it be its own thing. So ultimately what Canine Academy became is my retirement plan. I'm like, I'm only going to be able to take bites off dogs for so long. I think I still got another decade in me at least. But at some point, I'm not going to be able to take these dogs thrashing me around all day. So the idea is when that day comes, whenever it is, I could probably still be doing a lot of other things and continuing to develop Canine Academy, but I'd like to have that at a point where we're making, $5,000-$10,000 a month off just Canine Academy.
A question from Tori, the mom. Is it okay to let my dog sleep in bed with me as far as pack order? She's a 65-pound Rottie and knows to sleep at my feet, but should I have her on the bed at all?
Well, whether a dog is on a bed or furniture is all personal preference for the owners. Some people really want it. Some people don't want it at all. Our dogs are in the bed with us in the evening when we're relaxing. And then when we go to bed, they move onto the floor just because we don't have our king size bed yet. The RV is too small for them to sleep on the bed with us. When people mention things like pack, it's nuanced, but I generally say, I don't believe that dogs view humans the way that they view other dogs. So dogs are pack animals and they look at other dogs and they establish dominance hierarchies within their quote unquote pack if they're with a group of dogs. But there's a reason that you don't see elephants and tigers and zebras and dogs all running around together in a big group. It's because they look at those other animals and they're like, they are not dogs. I'm going to stick with dogs. And zebras go, that thing is not a zebra. I'm sticking with other zebras. So animals know that other animals are not the same as them. And so when you start talking about pack as if you, the human, are a part of that, I think you start to easily run down routes that are counterproductive when you're trying to train your dog. So the way I like to think about it is, I'm a Christian and I believe human beings were given dominion over creation. And a big part of that is taking care of and making better the world, right? And so our animals are a part of that. To take care of them and make them better. And they're also to integrate into our life in a way that's productive. So the way that we do that is we take responsibility, we raise our animals, we're fair to them, but we make them do what we want. So people will get into all this stuff. Don't let a dog walk through a door before you, or they'll think they're the dominant one. And I'm like, well, there's lots of times I need my dog to walk through the door before me. What if the door's open and I think somebody might be in there because it was closed when I went out to the store and I need them to go in there and check it for me, right? Or we're entering a room because I'm clearing my house. I want my dog to be the first one through the door. So it has nothing to do with whether your dog goes first or second. It has to do with, did you tell them to go first or second? If I tell my dog defer, that means get behind me. So if I'm going through a narrow space and I want my dog behind me instead of in front of me, I say defer and they get behind me. If I say go on, they go in front of me. It's like it has zero to do with the actual behavior and in terms of like a specific thing that's happening. And it has to do with you're in charge. What do you want the dog to do? Teach the dog that thing first and then require it after that. And sleeping on the bed is not an issue. But when you say get off, get on the floor, if they don't get off, that's when correction needs to come in. And, it can start light. You can just grab them and toss them on the floor and say, good floor. And if you have to do that more than a couple of times, well, okay, I gave you the chance that all I did was grab your collar and push you off the bed. If you're not going to accept that correction, then I guess we're going to go to something less comfortable. And I have the philosophy, every dog gets to pick their own correction. And so when I have a correction collar on a dog and they do something bad and I go, we that with a tiny little bump and they go, oh, sorry. And they do the thing. Okay, you picked a light correction. Our dogs usually need a whack, and that's like the minimum. And then they're like, huh? Oh, okay. And that's a light correction for most of our dogs, although we do have some lead-sensitive dogs sometimes. But you have to give a correction that means something to the dog, or you're not correcting them.
Yep.
There was something that my trainer said, something I didn't catch.
Oh yeah, he said my trainer told me dogs aren't people and don't think like people.
That is true.
No animal does. And
Yeah,
every time you're explaining the animal behavior in terms of people.
Well, people always want to know why, right? Why does the dog do this? I'm like, I don't care. I mean, that might be an interesting question to contemplate later, but when we're training, I don't care why. I care that. If I said sit and they didn't sit, I don't care that they're in a cold puddle of water and they don't want their balls to touch the water. I don't care. I said sit. Put your balls in the water and your ass on the ground and stay there, because that's what I said. And, you can be mean about it, and, you don't do it just to torture the dog, but you only get discipline one way: discomfort. It's the only way you get discipline. If you might be consistent, you might have patterns, but discipline means doing it when you don't want to. And the only way to develop that is by doing it when you don't want to, which means you're uncomfortable. And so you've got to put your dog in uncomfortable positions, fair, but uncomfortable positions, to say, do it anyway. And then pretty soon they'll do it whenever you say.
Is there any real middle ground between a working dog and a pet, or is it more cut and dry?
It depends on, like, when most people say pet, they basically mean a totally untrained dog that is miserable to live with. And, or maybe, moderately okay to live with, but has really annoying traits that we just put up with. That's what I think of when I hear most people talk about their quote unquote pet. And, they love them and all that other kind of stuff, or they, take them to a shelter. But in my mind, every dog, especially, maybe not cats and stuff, but every dog should be working all the time. Now, people hear that and they think, oh, we got to go for runs. We got to be out constantly doing like drills in the yard. And no, lay in that corner beside the couch. That's work. Go to your place and wait. That's what we call the place by the couch. That's your place. Go to your place. They go to their place. They lay down. Good place. They're working. Stay there. Don't move until I tell you. I walk by, give them a little pet on the head. Good place. Go do whatever we're doing. Right now, they're not underfoot. You know what they don't do while they're in their place? They don't get in the trash. They don't chew up your carpet. They don't do the things you don't want them to do when they're laying in their place. And that's work. Now, they don't have to lay there all day. When you go to the bedroom and you're going to be folding clothes or making beds, bring them into the bedroom with you. Point to a corner. That's a good spot. Go to your place. Lay down. When you're taking a shower, get up on the bed. Wait here while I take my shower. So you can move around, do stuff with your dog, but it's like, my opinion is my dogs are always doing what I tell them to do all the time. I don't just let them roam. If you want an obedient dog, then they need to be obedient all the time, because they're like 3-year-olds, right? They don't understand that now it's important to do what you're supposed to, but now it would be convenient, but not really a big deal. Like, they don't get it. They don't understand that. Either they're like, I do what my person says all the time, or they're like, why do I have to do that? I normally get to do whatever the hell I want. So if you mix that up, you start to confuse the dog, and your dog will start acting kind of like schizophrenic. Like, I'm doing this thing, but I might not be supposed to do this thing. So I got to keep an eye out just in case I'm in trouble for doing the thing. But sometimes I'm allowed to do the thing, but sometimes they yell at me when I do this thing. And if your dog is always in obedience and always doing what they're supposed to, they just sit there like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to do. I know my person is happy with me. I'm very confident right now. And then their whole demeanor is confident because they know what you want and they're doing it.
So you don't think that dogs should be on antidepressants?
If I had a dog on antidepressants, the best solution for that dog is a bullet in the head and a hole in the ground. That's my opinion. You don't have to have it, and you can have a dog on antidepressants.
And that is the short we're taking out of this show.
That's right.
I'd be curious to know how many animals are on antidepressants. I had never heard of it till a few years ago.
So I've had clients come and they have dogs that they give antidepressants to. They're like, the dog's nervous. And I'm like, no, you're nervous. And you're projecting your own problems onto your dog. That doesn't mean that there's not plenty of dogs out there that have crap genetics and have, should have never been produced in the first place. But I've never seen the problem where the dog on the medication is the one that needed the medication. It's always been the person that needed the medication. It's like, when my dogs are uncomfortable around thunderstorms, we go outside and play in the thunderstorm, and they learn, oh, thunderstorms are not that big a deal. You hear the thunder clap and the dog's like, Oh, I didn't like that. I'm going to move. No, you're not. Get back to your place. I didn't give you permission to move. And then when I hear a good thunderclap, I reach out and go, oh, that was a good one. I give them a scratch on the head. Pretty soon they're like, I want more of this thunder stuff. Like, bring the thunder on. And I get petted when the thunder happens. And so we treat our dogs like they're incompetent children. And I think this is kind of where our whole society and culture has gone. It's like, this is probably going to be controversial and we'll get kicked off YouTube for it. I think one of the problems in culture in general is the feminine mentality is what is needed in the home, but it doesn't scale. Meaning, I have an infant, I need to take care of it. I need to do whatever it needs to take care of my infant. That works. That's not only does it work, it's necessary in the home. It doesn't scale. And then now let's make it 10 times worse. Let's take 10,000 women with no children who need an infant to take care of. What do? What do I take care of? How about the oppressed? Yeah, that'll be my infant. And then they infantilize. Or how about your college students? You don't have any children of your own. Here's some college students to take care of. Oh, they need safe spaces and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know what men would do in those environments? I need a safe space. They'd get punched in the face. And they get told 3 feet farther or 3 inches farther away from me than that was safe. You were not in your safe space. So, men wouldn't allow it to happen unless they're trying to cater to the women who are doing that. And it's like, we've tried to smash these two worlds together and it doesn't work. It's like, they have to be in their proper places and they're just not right now. And so what have we done? Since we're not having kids that much anymore, we turn our dogs into kids and then we infantilize them. And then now they're just running around. They're more of a hazard. And then we when we're trying to make ourselves feel better. I can't think of the name of it right now. Virtue signal. That's what it is. We virtue signal how wonderful we are because we put up with this piece of crap dog that we refuse to train and that is a terror to live with. But we're such a good person because I still love them. And it's like, the mothers who destroy their sons and then go, but I'm such a wonderful mother because I still love this little monster I created. And
yeah, I saw a short the other morning, and the lady said, it's a race, it's a competition to see who can have the most useless, messed up, just completely ugly little dog. And they adopt these dogs and like, I'm going to adopt a handicapped dog. So you get a dog that's got a wheelchair, and I'm going to one up you and I'm going to get a dog in a wheelchair with only one front leg.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just crazy the amount of money these people put in, and they don't want kids. They want this little animal.
Mm-hmm.
They have this emotional attachment, but don't have any kids. Not that they can't have kids. They just don't have any children.
Well, my mentor used to say, weak people cannot breed strong dogs. It is not in them. And I kind of halfway understood what he meant at the time, but the longer I've been in the dog world, the more I've seen it. Even within the breeds that I work, it's like weakness. It's just creeping in everywhere. And I mean, no one wants to put a dog down, but are you more concerned about that one animal or the 10,000 you're going to create after it because you refuse to do that the one time?
In the 70s, when walking down the street and seeing somebody with their dog, it would not have occurred to me to be afraid that dog's going to bite me on the way by, or that it was going to fight with my dog, or that my dog was going to fight with that dog.
Yep.
It happened. It's not like it never happened, but it did not occur to me. Now, I would love to go hiking with my dogs, but other people go hiking with their dogs.
Yep.
And I'm just like, you never know which one's going to snap.
Yep.
And so that is definitely the expectation out and about is just different.
Yeah.
And now I think about it. I see a dog, I'm like, is that one going to bite me just for no reason because my hair is brown or whatever?
Well, I think in the 70s, 80s, everybody had this, the Doberman Pinscher was that bad dog that was going to bite everybody. And then it was the Rottweiler, and then it was the Pit Bull. But I mean, what dog bites the most amount of people? I think it was the Golden Retriever.
Golden Retrievers and Poodle. Chihuahuas, I think.
Yeah, now it's Chihuahua. Yeah, Poodle for a long time was the number one. Most people bit by their own dog was a Poodle. Not a Poodle, a Cocker Spaniel.
Oh, yeah. Cocker Spaniels were bad for a long time, too.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, there was also a sense back then of responsibility. of personal responsibility. And it was a very real thing. I mean, I remember situations in our neighborhoods where it was fully acceptable for a friend's parent to spank you if you deserved it. But your parents were going to want to make sure that you actually deserved it. And if you didn't deserve it, there was probably going to be a fight between those two dads. Like when dad got home, there was going to be some words said, and it was at the very least going to be like very uncomfortable situation for a few minutes because everybody expected the other person to act responsibly, and there was actually going to be a consequence if you didn't, and especially if it affected somebody else. Now, if you just kept it within your family, people just left each other alone. But nowadays, we don't want to leave each other alone in our families, but we also don't want any responsibility, right? I think the worst thing we did was all this no-fault everything. No fault insurance on your car accidents. It's like, but somebody was at fault. And if truly nobody was at fault, then each person pays for their own damage. Okay. But that's very rare. And the best solution to people doing stupid things is bad consequences. And the worst, especially, make them, I guess, equal to the crime. So if you kill somebody, you're probably going either to jail for the rest of your life, or in my opinion, you should be a slave to that family for the rest of your life. You have to replace the injury that occurred. And so if you kill a person, if that was the father that was providing for the family, guess what? You're on the hook now. Your job is to provide for that family the rest of their life. And that level of consequence seems extreme to us, but it keeps people responsible.
Well, that's part of the Torah, isn't it? Just like if I loan you something,
that's the valid form of slavery.
Yeah, I can't loan you a piece of equipment that you can't pay for. That's me putting you into slavery.
Exactly.
Same thing, man. Stupid should hurt.
Yep.
And it does not any longer. That
goes back to that fuck around and find out thing.
I was like, we just came full circle on FIFO.
Right. It's like, we would fuck around and find out, but we were doing it at levels that it was safe. I would cut my fingers with my pocket knife, and I learned, don't cut that way. You cut your thumb when you cut that way. Cut the other direction, and you won't cut your own fingers. So it hurt, but it was at a low enough level that I was learning the lesson without, permanent injury. Nowadays, we don't let kids do anything. And then when they do get out there, they do something egregious, and they don't feel like they should have any responsibility for it at all because they've never had responsibility before. And it's like, I think we just need to have a day where everybody walks around and punches young kids in the face just so they know what it feels like.
I can hear Wendy laughing.
Yep. I was waiting till I said something crazy enough for her to actually laugh at it.
Yep. All right. Well, I think ending on FIFO is the perfect time. So find out is the important part of fuck around. Let's go once around the horn. Let's start with you, Joel.
All right. Yep. We're starting to get back into our podcast. So probably within 2 weeks, every Thursday night, we'll have our podcast at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We live stream it on our channel at FortressK9, and then it's also on others, whatever StreamYard lets me put it on. We have k9academy.us. If you have a dog and you want to learn how to train it the way we train, check that out. If you follow Jack on the Survival Podcast, by the way, go over to his website and click on the link over there. Give him some credit for it. And then if you're interested in getting a dog, we have Malinois, German Shepherd, and Dutch Shepherd. We have puppies available as well as trained dogs. If you're interested in a trained dog, send me a text, 813-836-9244, and we'll get you started.
I'm Nicole Sauce from Living Free in Tennessee at LFTN on YouTube. If you want to follow the adventures of a person building the life she chooses on her terms and trying to help other people do the same, check out those podcasts about homesteading, self-reliance, and building your business at livingfreeintennessee.com. And if you just want the freshest coffee you can get delivered to your door that I have spent time pre-screening because I love tasting the beans to find the best ones, you can do that at my coffee company, hollowroast.com. John, why don't you wrap us up today?
Again.
What?
I need to get my subscription going again now that we're moved.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
We're
running K-Cups now, too.
SOEtacticalgear.com. That's the website. I do a live video every night at 9:00 on the YouTube channel. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. We've got over 5,000 videos on YouTube. We do 6 video series and 2 full-length podcasts every week. So super easy to find on all platforms.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next week.
Sounds great. Bye, everybody.